We now have a very special guest indeed. I recently met Val Burgess by email and telephone, and so I'm so pleased to actually see her in person on Zoom. Val has been so involved with stories about veterans through her Wars Voices World War II POW project. She's a historian, a TEDx speaker. She has a special speech for us this evening. The title, First Action, First Words Spoken, First War for a Young Man. Please welcome Val Burgess.
The fire chief said to the men, "It's Sunday, I don't think we'll have much to do. The flight line is really quite slow on Sunday, so probably there'll be no fires we need to fight." Let's stop back just a little bit to fill in this story. On July 1st, 1941, 17-year-old Melvin Hackman, he picked his duty station, the Naval Air Base called Ford Island in Pearl Harbor. He was at his best when he worked Monday through Friday, assembling aircraft and repairing them. But every 4 weeks, he had to show up and serve for 24 hours in whatever job they had for him. It just so happened that 24-hour job started on December 7th, 1941. It was supposed to end at 8 o'clock in the morning, but that duty lasted a lot longer than he expected. Mel reported to the fire station at 7:45 on December 7th. Purdy was there and the fire chief, and they talked about duties. All of a sudden, there was an aircraft that came over. It was an unusual aircraft. It had or red circles on the wings. As luck would have it, or for that pilot, he moved over, he cut the cable that connected the naval fleet to the mainland. Prudy, who recognized that aircraft, he started waving his arm in the air and he kept saying, "Those blankety blank blank, those blankety blank blanks." And so quite soon that aircraft headed off and bombed the hangar that stored aviation fuel. Those guys jumped on the back of the fire truck. They had their feet on the platform and held onto the bar. They took off. But then a fighter came in after them. He started peppering the ground, the asphalt. It looked like boiling water. And that black tar was popping up. It was burning Purdy and Mel's back. They had burns on their arms and any open skin because the asphalt was so hot. Soon a bomb was dropped at about 60 feet behind them. But the fire chief got them out of there and they stopped at the bay. They were going to fill the engine, the fire truck, with water. But the hoses were so badly damaged, they had to abandon that. The fire chief took them on further down the bay to the end of Ford Island. And there behind them was a house. He said to the men, "That's my home. My wife is there. You protect it." And so he took off to help elsewhere. Purdy and Mel stood there looking around, and they looked straight ahead of them. And there was the USS Arizona, the West Virginia, the Oklahoma, and on down the way. Very quickly, the whole sky filled with aircraft. Bombers, fighters, torpedo guns. There was a high altitude bomber that came in, dropped a piercing bomb that hit the front deck of the Arizona. It went right through the deck and blew the magazine. Very quickly, they saw torpedo planes that were flying very close to the surface of the water. They dropped their torpedoes. It was perfect. Suddenly, they exploded simultaneously. Mel said he saw the Arizona lift up out of the water, and then it broke and went down. She carried with her 1,177 men, one of Mr. Reese's family members. Hickman and Prudy had to hold on to each other around a palm tree because the winds, the percussion of those bombs was over 100 miles an hour. Soon they heard voices screaming, "Help me, help me, help me." And they noticed in the water the gasoline, all the fuel that was burning, and the men were trying to swim through it. Mel bent over and picked up a man out of the water. Unfortunately, this man was only from his waist up. He held him in his arms until he died, and then he let him slip back in to the water. That day, Mel Heckman helped 15 other men who survived. One man, Mel Heckman, was just 17 years old. On December 7th, 2016, Mel Heckman, one of the very few survivors of Pearl Harbor, returned there for the very first time in his life. Surrounded by family members, they went back to the places where the first sound, the first words, and his first war experience began. Mel was respected. He earned a Purple Heart and is now memorialized at the World War II Valor in the Pacific National Monument at Pearl Harbor. Mel asked me to continue to tell his story because he didn't want to be forgotten. I respect him and so many others I've been able to interview because truly their stories need to be told to so many people, especially our children today. In 1995, I was fortunate to travel with 127 former prisoners of war back to the Great Escape prison camp of World War II fame. We went to their camp, we followed their forced march, we ended up in southern Germany where they were liberated from another camp. The Germans celebrated them. I learned about their war. I started recording their stories. That was 28 years ago. Our War's Voices archives holds approximately 200 oral histories. We have the largest collection of Radio Tokyo letters. We have personal accounts, photos, letters, unit histories, and manuscripts. It is my mission to tell their stories for the remainder of my life. Last night, I gave this speech to a Toastmasters club, a different Toastmasters club. And someone said to me, "Why are you wearing those clothes?" And I said, well, this is a uniform that the women air service pilots might have worn. And I wear it because it brings me closer to them. And that's always what I hope, is to share their stories in a way that they would be proud. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you for sharing, Val, for sharing Mel's story and for all the other stories you have shared and will continue to share. We appreciate that. Your position is very, very important, and I hope we get to hear many more of those. By the way, Val is joining us from Sheridan, Wyoming.